in the modern world, everything that we do, it's a financial transaction,
Yeah.
right? The clothes we wear, the hobbies we take up, how much time we have to spend with our children and our loved ones, the vacations we go on, the memories that we make. Those are all financial transactions. And what's possible in our lives and for our lives, it's largely determined by the money that we make and the choices that we make with that money. We do people a disservice by teaching them only about how to be an employee and not also teaching them about entrepreneurship. I believe every person should know how to get a job in someone else's company, but also how to make money outside of traditional employment, because that's how we create our own income stability.
Today, we have a woman who is the quintessential professional on one of my favorite topics, money. Yes, it makes the world go round, and no, it is not a dirty word. So, without further ado, allow me the distinct pleasure of introducing you to Scarlett Cochran. Thank you for coming, Scarlett.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk. When I saw that the title of one of your books is Money Can Buy Happiness, I'm like, yes, exactly. So I know we're going to have a great conversation.
Great. So I love the topic of money, right? I'm going to sort of kind of jump right into it. See, this is why I don't have a script. All my listeners know this because I just thought of something. So here's what sort of kind of pisses me off. When women are at work, even entrepreneurial women, but women in general, it's almost like if they want a raise or they want a promotion, the back channeling is, oh, she's all about the money. She just wants the money. I'm like, yeah, like, why not? And then they're like, well, I don't, she's overpaid. I'm like, really? I have yet. And listen, I love men. I adore my husband. 3 of my 4 children are young men. I do not bash men. I'm not us against them, right? We're in this together. But having said that, I've never met a man who thought he was overpaid. Never. And Scarlett, I bet you and I both know plenty of them that are overpaid. And yet, I don't think women are paid what they're worth. And my perspective always comes from a place of, I am not into being a victim. I know that's sort of kind of the culture out there today, right? To me, you're a victim or a victor. It's your choice. But I like to take the perspective, well, if you're not getting paid what you're worth, if you're not financially in your life where you want to be, take a look in the mirror. I just found out Scarlett's also from Brooklyn, so she'll appreciate my mirror accent. Because you have to take personal responsibility for your life. We cannot wait for the politicians of the world to come in and rescue us. It's not going to happen. So, having said that, share with us your journey, not your traditional journey, but your real journey that people don't know, that got you from Brooklyn, where I'm convinced everybody, you shake that family tree hard enough, somebody from Brooklyn drops out. From Brooklyn, she also went to Yale, and I just moved from Connecticut, so we have that in common, to now the incredible author of One Big Happy Life and a financial guru for people around the world. What got you here?
Wow. Well, it's been 20 years. So it's been quite a long journey from Brooklyn to where I am right now. I know, right? And really, I will say the main thing that underlies my whole journey is really my commitment to going after the life that I desired, regardless of what everyone else around me told me was possible for me. So I left Brooklyn.
You can't.
Exactly. This is impossible. So I left Brooklyn after graduating high school. I went to Midwood High School. I started at Bronx Science, which you'll be familiar with being from New York. And then I finished at Midwood.
I used to swim at Brooklyn College. I was one of the first female lifeguards at Reese Park, so I know Midwood very well. Yeah.
And I joined the Marine Corps. So I enlisted as an
Semper
active
Fi, baby.
Marine. and to get money for college. And because they told me, hey, you can see the world. And of course, to move out of my parents' house because I was beyond ready to not be living with them anymore.
So you went into the Marine Corps not as an officer right out of high school.
Right, because I actually wasn't a citizen. I was a permanent resident. I came to Brooklyn when I was 2 years old. I was born in Guyana in South America. Yeah, so I enlisted as a permanent resident. By that time, both of my parents were citizens, but they never paid for my citizenship because it's quite expensive, right, to do it.
Hang on a second, Scarlett. Yeah. Just a side note to anyone that doubts it. Scarlett is evidence the American dream is alive and well. Go ahead.
Yes. Also evidence that there are a lot of non-citizens serving and, dying for this flag, this country. So an important thing for us to keep in mind, because I think that people are really surprised when they find out that I was not a citizen when I enlisted in the Marine Corps, but you don't have to be a citizen to serve in the military. And this was just before 9/11.
People have a lot of misconceptions. People have a lot of misconceptions about the military. But anyway.
Well, 1 year into my active duty enlistment, I met a guy. I fell in love. It seemed like it was going to be forever. Look, I was young and naive, right? Raised on Disney princess stories where it's happily ever after with the first guy. Yeah. And we got pregnant, got engaged. 3 months into the pregnancy, he breaks off the engagement. And I decided, well,
did he know you were pregnant?
He knew.
Did he know? He did.
And our parents knew. So everyone knew, and he just changed his mind. But I decided I did not change my mind. I made the decision that I wanted this baby. It wasn't like a oops, right? It was a conversation. And so I decided I was going to have my daughter, and everyone told me, well, that's crazy and your life is over. And, basically I could just kiss all of my dreams goodbye if I became a single mom, at 18 years old, 19 years old. And
now, were you allowed to be a single mom in the military? Forgive my...
Yes. As long as you don't. You have to have a plan for if you deploy, where will your child go?
The baby.
And for me, the only option would be for her to go with my parents, because my only family members in the United States were my mom, my dad, and my brother in terms of like my core family. So that was the only option. And that's what I planned to do. But also because of that, that's what made me question a career in the military, because now I'm a mom. And now I have this job where I could deploy at any time, which seemed fine as a single woman. But as a mom, that was not something I wanted to do. And as a single mom, I was especially not comfortable doing that, because it's not like I could leave her with her dad, right? Because her biological dad just, completely washed his hands and said, I'm not going to, I don't want to be involved at all. So,
and I would imagine there were no checks coming in the mail either from Mr. Loser. Okay.
Of course, I took him to court and got child support. That's what it took. Right. I did not. I think a lot of women
does he pay it?
Well, they garnished his wages.
They did. Okay. Because that's he
was a fellow Marine. So that's one thing with the Marine Corps. They take that kind of stuff seriously. You can't just shirk your responsibilities financially. You can emotionally and physically, but not financially. So, but it did take a while for me to, he even tried to deny paternity. So I had to get the whole paternity test and everything. Like, he fought tooth and nail. And sometimes that it takes that work, right, to get what we deserve, right? Because it wasn't just for me, but it's like, this is your child. You should be at the very least supporting her financially, because you know what you were getting into when we made this baby. And it's fine if you don't want to be involved, but financially, I'm not going to bear the costs of our decisions by myself. So I realized that I wasn't making enough money in the Marine Corps, even after getting the housing allowance. After having my daughter, I was only making $24,000 a year, working a full-time job, and a very risky and dangerous job at that. And again, this was right after 9/11 happened. So now we're a country at war, and I could be deployed at any time. And so I realized that also I wanted work. I asked too many questions. I didn't stay in my lane enough for the people in the military. And there was a lot of sexism there too, right? As a woman that's strong-willed and asking questions and wants to change things for the better, that was not available to me as an enlisted Marine. So I made the decision that I was going to go to college and I was going to get a degree. I could either be a doctor or a lawyer because that's the only thing that's allowed for immigrant children as far as our
Is
parents are
that right?
concerned. Oh yeah, it's doctor or
From
lawyer.
a
At least for
cultural
me, I
perspective.
know in other immigrant cultures you could be something like an engineer or something like that, but I didn't even know what an engineer was until I was in college.
Hmm.
Like I just didn't learn about those things despite having gone to two actually very good high schools. I think Bronx High School of Science was better than Midwood because in Midwood I didn't receive any
Yeah.
college counseling whatsoever.
By the way, what brought you from Bronx High School of Science to Midwood? I would say that's a significant
Yeah,
step
so crazy story. I was
down.
cutting school one day with my boyfriend, and we were
Oh,
right across the street from the school. The security guard crossed the street because he knows us, right? It's like they know who goes to the school.
everyone knows you. Yeah.
Right, exactly. To get us to come back to school. And my boyfriend decided to resist him. And so they got into a scuffle. And, meanwhile, I'm like, stop, what's going on? And the security guard is like, all right, you sit on the curb. So I sat on the curb. The police came. My boyfriend got arrested because he kept resisting to the point where they were about to spray him with mace. And keep in mind, we're 15, 16 years old. I'm 15, he's 16. And that got us both suspended and it got me kicked out.
What about him?
He got to graduate. I was a sophomore, he was a junior. So the person who got arrested got to stay, and me, I got kicked out. Even though I did not get arrested, I went back to school the same day. Nothing happened. I didn't do anything. And I do believe I really do believe that there was racism involved there because my boyfriend was not a dark-skinned black man. But here I am.
Your parents must have been freaking out because Bronx High School of Science, for the listeners that don't know, in New York, there are several elite high schools. And I don't know if it's like this now, but back then they didn't care if you were black, brown, Barney the Purple Dinosaur. It was test scores.
Yep.
And either you tested in or you tested out, and nobody cared what you looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so merit-based, and many, many people from low socioeconomic backgrounds, I know this for a fact, it was really their ticket, I'm going to say it, to the American dream, right? So your parents must have been like freaking out.
Yeah, and I would say that if my parents, again, immigrant parents, and so not used to having to stand up to authority, not used to having to advocate to say, hey, this isn't right. And it was not Bronx High School of Science specifically that made the decision. It was like some other school board officials. So there wasn't.
They could have probably appealed it, but they didn't even know.
Right, exactly. They could have given more pushback even in the hearing, but I think that they felt very powerless. And this is one of those instances where, I don't really. Should I have been cutting school? No.
You're 15 years old. We all do stupid things when we're 15. I mean,
exactly. And
if that's the worst thing a 15-year-old does as a teenager, you're way ahead of the game.
I wasn't drinking or doing drugs. Like we would play video games, right? We would walk around down New York City, Manhattan, I would go to the library a lot, actually, when I would cut school. That's how nerdy I was. But, that is one of those injustices that I know that happened in my life, that there was nothing that I could do to fix it. But at the end of the day, still, I was not going to let that define me for the rest of my life. And I think it can be so easy when things happen that are outside of our control, where we are not treated fairly, where we don't have power, that it can create this lasting negative weight on our lives and what we think is possible.
The victim we were talking about earlier, right? You can become the victim and live that out. And all you're doing is abdicating your power.
Yeah. But you can imagine when now I'm pregnant with my daughter, it felt like more of the same, right? Like the same sort of.
Actually, I'm already questioning your choices of men at this point. But
this is true.
You've got two losers so far.
Because I also never really learned, what did a healthy relationship look like? To me, again, just guys who wanted to be around me, who gave me affection, right? Because I didn't get that much at home. Right. So I spent too many of my younger years just searching for someone to love me versus loving myself. But so I had my daughter, got out of the Marine Corps. Now I'm going to school. I thought I was going to be a nurse practitioner because I didn't want to go through residency as a doctor. But then I got to the clinicals for nursing and I realized I didn't want to touch human bodily fluids. And so then I switched over to economics and becoming a lawyer.
Good call. Good call.
And then I Googled, how do you get into law school, which is how I accomplished everything in my life, right? I Google it. Mm-hmm. How do you do this? Because I don't have anyone to guide me. And a lot of people hold themselves back with this idea of, well, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, well,
do you know, Scarlett, the number one search on YouTube, talking to somebody, a coaching client earlier, is how to. And you just figure, like, I'm using I forget what kind of camera it was. I couldn't figure it out. So I Googled. I went on YouTube, how to use a whatever. And here we are.
I think we are all so lucky to live in this world of the internet and Google, because 20 years ago, if you didn't know how to do something, you would have to go to the library and read books and hope that there was something in there. And the information may not even be that current. But now we have the internet right at our disposal, and you can learn how to pretty much do anything. I'm learning how to garden right now, and I'm a person that's killed plants my whole life, but I'm hoping to grow
I have a black
vegetables this summer. Exactly. Yeah. But I'm rewriting that narrative for me. I'm going to learn how to garden this year. But I Googled how to get into law school.
North Carolina. That's what happens when you move to North Carolina.
Yeah, the weather is perfect. I hear you can grow things year round here, so we'll see.
We'll find out.
But when I Googled how to get into Yale, how to get into law school, that's when I learned that where you go to law school affects your job prospects after law school. And the top law schools,
especially in law.
People scoff at that, but it is the truth. I scoffed at it, but
even more so true. It's even more so true.
And it's very hierarchical, where, you've got your top 14. They are even called the top 14 law schools, but even the top schools in the top 14, you have different job prospects than number 14. I was skeptical about it, but I said, you know what? I'm going to just follow this. It can't hurt for me to try to get into the top schools. And I ended up getting into all of the tops, like most of the top schools. I didn't get into NYU or Penn, but I got into, Yale, Harvard, Stanford, Michigan with a full ride.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I went to NYU, all my degrees at NYU.
Oh. And I definitely would have considered going if they had admitted me, but they didn't.
Yeah. So, I didn't go to law school. You're way ahead of me. Trust me.
But here's when I realized that it was the truth. So I went to Yale, and then I summered at a fancy pants law firm in New York City. And there are these super old partners. Cravath, Swain and Moore.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So one of the top law firms in New York City. Yep. Yeah. And these super, super old partners, right? Making millions of dollars, and would ask, where did you go to law school? And I'd say Yale. And they were like, oh, Yale. Right. The awe in their voice. And they went to Harvard. Right. But Harvard is number 2 and Yale is number 1.
But you were instantly part of the club.
Exactly.
Like, they already knew you were part of the club because you were there. Right. You wouldn't have been there if you weren't part of the club. But
exactly. But the fact that they held Yale in such high esteem at that stage in their career, despite having gone to also a really, really well-ranked and well-respected law school, just really goes to show you how deeply entrenched the hierarchy is when it comes to where you go to law school and your job prospects. So I've found that to be the case. And
so you were part of the secret handshake society.
Right. And really, the reason why I did it was to maximize my odds of success, to open up as many possible opportunities for me to succeed in whatever direction I decided to go in law school, which is another big part of my journey. I always look for ways to maximize my odds of success because, like you, I believe that if I want an outcome, it's going to be up to me to create that for myself. I cannot rely on chance or other people or waiting for the government to change a regulation in order for me to have.
You reverse engineer. This is where I want to be. Now, what do I have to do to get there?
Exactly. And so went to law school, became a banking and finance attorney, regulated the US financial system at the major federal regulators. So
excuse me, I think for when we're recording this, I think there's a bank in Silicon Valley that needed you. Silicon Valley Bank, like talk about disaster, mismanagement, shall we say.
Yeah. So funny thing. So there's the actual, why is it slipping my mind? So there is the consumer compliance side of regulatory work. Oh, and there's the safety and soundness side. So those are actually two different sides. And I never got to work on the safety and soundness side, which really I'm still very frustrated about. When I worked at the FDIC, I did consumer compliance. So complying with consumer finance regulations. And I wanted to cross train in safety and soundness, and they would not let me. They don't allow it.
What was the difference? What was the difference? What was the difference? And why was it so in their mind's eye, fluid?
Yeah. So I believe it's fluid, but safety and soundness is really about how you run the bank, the bank's reserves, the quality of the assets that they hold to make sure that the bank is running in a way that minimizes its odds of failure. Versus
so risk or no?
Yes, risk. Yes.
Okay.
It's risk of failure, right?
Okay.
And whereas consumer compliance, it's really about the quality of the products that they are creating for consumers, making sure that those products comply with regulations, making sure that they are offering their credit products in a non-discriminatory way, which is not something that banks have been doing in the US for very long until we had the Fair Housing Act and also making sure that they're producing high quality mortgages, which is a result of the Dodd-Frank Act that created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, right, as a result of the 2008 meltdown. So they're both important things, but it's possible to run a bank really well on the risks and the safety and soundness side, while also producing low quality products that poorly affect regular people's lives in an overall negative way. So we want to make sure that they're doing both. Yeah. And so I focused on the consumer compliance, which is understanding specific consumer financial products. So what does a good mortgage look like? What do their default rates look like? What do their what practices look like when a loan goes delinquent and they're attempting to rehabilitate that loan? Do they offer the same credit terms to everyone who is similarly qualified? Those types of questions. We make sure that they're doing those things. And so I did that.
So why wouldn't they let you? Why wouldn't they let you go over to the other side?
I think it's just bureaucracy. It's someone once upon a time just decided that they have this silo between the different parts of the bureau, and they just decided that it was better. And so there's just this hard and fast rule that you're not allowed to do both. But I do know, at least I was told, that once upon a time, it used to be the case that they did cross train, but they've stopped doing that.
I think they're protecting, I think everybody's protecting their turf.
Yep.
Right. So Scarlett, now, like for me, if I came back an accountant after I die, I would know I'm in hell. Like it's the last thing I'd want to do, right? So did you when I hear you say this, like you're doing a great job, making it sound so interesting. I know I would rather watch paint dry. So did you enjoy this work? Because you,
oh my gosh, I loved it. And let me also say, my husband is a lawyer, but also an accountant.
You finally got
trade.
A good pick.
And I hate
number 3, the charm.
This is husband. Yeah, this is husband number 2, actually. I got married and divorced. And so I learned my lessons along the way.
There you go.
But I cannot stand accounting. When he tries to talk the accounting lingo to me, because we run a business, he does our accounting. And so he's talking to me about like the book balances, which I understand. I know all of our numbers, but what I don't know is the accounting terminology. And I find the accounting terminology to be very annoying and obnoxious. Yeah. So I think it is possible to truly understand your finances and what's going on with your finances while not understanding or liking the accounting principles, which is a completely just some system that someone made up that lays on top of what the actual numbers are. So I understand why it
Again,
exists, but understand that you don't have to
again,
love accounting.
again, I think it's people protecting their turf. But I gotta look. I have plenty of accountants that I work with. Their firms I work with, I coach, I consult, right? But I gotta say, I gotta hand it to the attorneys. Nobody is slower to innovate, and nobody is more turf protective than you guys. Just saying.
Yeah, but to go back to your question though, did I really find it interesting? And the answer is yes. Why? Because it is like understanding the world that we live in. In the modern world, everything that we do is there's so much there, it's a financial transaction.
Yeah.
Right? The clothes we wear, the hobbies we take up, how much time we have to spend with our children and our loved ones, the vacations we go on, the memories that we make. Those are all financial transactions. And what's possible in our lives and for our lives, it's largely determined by the money that we make and the choices that we make with that money. So how could I not love it?
All right, that's true. So you're doing this work that you love at the bank, and at this point, are you married to Prince Charming?
Yes. Yep. I
Okay.
divorced right after law school and I married Joseph really we became engaged within a year after I divorced.
Okay. So I thought you told me earlier that he's an attorney. So you said he does tax. So he's an LLM attorney?
No, he actually doesn't practice, but he does have a
Okay.
law degree. He has like a law
Okay.
adjacent career. He does real estate work.
Okay. All right. So you get out of law school, you get this great job, you're doing this great work. You have one child at this point, right? Okay, so timestamp now where you are geographically and career-wise after the marriage, you're living happily ever after. At what point was there a pivot, a transition? And what happened? Because things we don't just decide.
Right. So
We want to think we do, but we don't.
So right after law school, I had a great job, but I wasn't making that much money because I worked for the federal government. Now, that much money, putting it in perspective, I was making $60,000 a year, which is three times as much as I was making in the Marine Corps.
No,
but
that's not a lot of money coming out of Yale. No.
And not the amount, not enough to support the lifestyle that I wanted, right? I knew my ideal income was 6 figures plus. But I made the decision to go into public interest in part because I hated working at the law firms. I was not willing to do that work just to make that income. I was determined to figure out how to make the income that I wanted, doing the work that I enjoyed and having the quality of life that I wanted as well.
So clearly you missed the class in law school, how to sell your soul to make 6+ figures.
Right.
So go
Thankfully. Thankfully that did not fit into my class schedule.
Yeah.
And so I just decided I was going to work my way up in that career. And I gave myself, in 5 years, I said I wanted to be a branch chief. I wanted to be the head of, a region of HUD. And I did it in 3. And so that's what allowed me to go from 60K to making over 6 figures. I just constantly looked at, well, what does it take for me to become a branch chief? What kinds of things do I need to do? Which meant that I was doing things that were not specifically in my job description. But if something came up, I was there to support so that because guess what? It's going to pay me back on my resume to say that I've done this kind of work.
Scarlett was the go-to. You want it done, give it to Scarlett. She'll figure it out.
Exactly. And so I became a branch chief over Region 3, which is the Philadelphia, Virginia, Maryland area, Pennsylvania. And at that point, Joseph and I had been trying to have a baby for 5 years. And of course, here's an instance where, okay, well, I did this right. I waited until I finished school to try to have another baby. And then I get divorced immediately. And then I start trying almost immediately with Joseph because I'm 30 now, right? So the clock's ticking and we're not able to conceive.
Ancient. Scarlett,
right? By
ancient.
that time, although no one really tells us that, right? That actually the
Right.
best time for us to have children to maximize our fertility is in our 20s, not in our 30s. And so we started doing infertility treatments.
Well,
And
actually,
then,
Scarlett, I will push back on that.
Mhm.
I do think we're told that, but we choose to not want to hear it because we're building our career and it gets in the way. I
So
think we
I
are told
didn't
that
hear that. No one told me that, right?
because we don't hear it. We don't hear it.
All
I
everyone
think we are.
So
I think we're
I
told,
think
but
it
we
just
don't hear.
depends on,
True.
because remember, I was not a working woman, a career like a white collar person until I was basically in my late 20s. So I hadn't
Mm,
been in that world for very long. I was in a blue collar world where having sex before marriage was shameful, and that
mm,
where the first time you have sex you get pregnant, right? They make it
mm.
seem like getting pregnant is as easy as just having sex one time.
Right.
So,
Right.
where I didn't really learn about birth control either until I had already had a child of my own. So, that was my
Hmm.
lived
Hmm.
experience with
Hmm.
fertility until I started trying to have a baby and realized, hey, actually, infertility is really common.
Real.
Um, and so, right at that same time, even after just landing this like job that was a career maker, Joseph's job um, went away in the area where he was.
Hmm.
So he had two options. He could either keep the current position but not be able to be promoted, which at 27 years old, because he's 3 years younger than me, who's going to sit in a job for 40 years where they can't be promoted, or we could move. And one of the options we were given was DC. And DC, in the DC area, infertility treatments like IVF are covered by insurance. So we moved
Mm.
to DC so that we could do IVF and ended up getting pregnant naturally before we completed the move. But everything was already set. So we still had to move here. And we ended up having our son, Reeves, who is now 7 years old. And again, that caused a shift in me to rethink what I wanted in my life and how I wanted to live my life. After struggling to conceive for 5 years, I wanted to be more present. I didn't want long commutes to DC. And so I took the job with the FDIC that actually turned into a terror job, like tons of travel. And that's how I started One Big Happy Life as this fun little
Now,
side project.
now the FDIC though, that's a government job, right?
It
So you
is.
have a GS rating. So truth be told, that's usually people tend to think that's pretty stress free. You work whatever you work. You don't. Nobody's ever any government I work with. Nobody's ever in a rush. Nothing's urgent. But it sounds like that wasn't the case for you.
Yeah. So there were two things that made that job very difficult for me. So one, when I applied for the job, I understood that I would have to go to the banks physically. So any bank that I was examining for compliance, I would need to go to the banks. That was fine because I lived in Maryland. And so Maryland is not that big of a state. So from one end to the
Right.
other, you're talking a 3 hour drive. So I really didn't have a problem with that. And it wasn't until after I got the job and now I'm in the job that they said, oh, yeah, we cover New Jersey too. And they were sending me past the there's a New Jersey office. They would send me past the New Jersey office to the topmost banks in New Jersey that the people in the New Jersey office didn't want to go to. And so my newborn,
Why didn't they
yes,
want to go? Why didn't they want to
they
go?
wanted the closer New Jersey banks. And it was the craziest thing because I'm like, this has to be fraud, waste, and abuse that you're sending people in Maryland past the New Jersey office, paying for all of this extra travel and time to send someone who is further away up north when you have people who are closer. And so I would question this. And again, this particular leadership, this is the only time I've ever had this experience in the federal government where the leadership resisted any kind of input or comment. It was like being in the Marine Corps again. And it was very much a like, who does she think she is? Questioning what we're doing. And so it was just a very unpleasant working environment for me. And I decided to leave immediately as soon as I realized what was happening. But in the
Cut your
meantime,
losses.
I'm
Yeah.
doing my job. I'm learning new things as much as possible to make myself marketable. You make the best you can out of every situation. And my pay did increase. So that was that, I mean, even though I was on the GS scale, was I on the GS scale? I'm trying to figure out. I don't think the FDIC is on the GS scale actually. But my pay increased. And 6 months later, I landed a job with the CFPB as policy counsel, which was my dream job. I'd always wanted to work for the CFPB.
What does that stand for the listeners?
Oh, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is the agency that was created by the Dodd-Frank Act after
Dodd-Frank.
Yep, after the 2008 financial crisis. So, and that's really where the good stuff is happening. It's where the policy is being made. It's like they are truly consumer advocates. And I love that. The public servant in me loves an agency that is looking out for the people, right? So, but I had already started One Big Happy Life, right? As a passion project to take my mind off of the job that I didn't like because I was unhappy. And so when I started this new CFPB job, I kept doing One Big Happy Life. I just had to get an ethics.
What does that look like? How did you do that, right? You have 2 kids. You're working full time in a stressful job. So do you not sleep? Like when you say you started One Big Happy Life, what did that look like?
So what's funny is it looked like whatever I felt like talking about in the moment is what I talked about, which typically was whatever was going on in my life and how my life ran. So for example, you will see videos, if you go on to YouTube and you look at the oldest videos, you will see videos of me actually documenting my job search as I was trying to get a new job while I was working at the FDIC. So there's one of me, like I'm pumping. I had this breast pump thing that fits under your clothing so I could pump while I was driving around. And so I'm pumping gas in the gas station, trying to also get to a job interview in DC from the bank that I was examining in Frederick, Maryland. And so, I would talk about how do I meal plan? How do I balance my budget? I would teach the 1-year spending plan, which is the budgeting method that I recommend, which is budgeting for your whole year at once versus going paycheck by paycheck. And it was just fun. It was a hobby. And at that time, I didn't even realize. I can see
it being fun. You were Instagramming.
Right. And it's not something that I started with the intention of it being a business. I understood that it could make money over time. But I just told myself, if in 5 years, when Alexis goes to college, this is making $2,000 a month, then I'll be happy because then it'll pay for college for her. Well, within 3 years, I was making multiple 6 figures and I was able to quit my job and just be in my business full time, which just has been incredible.
Okay, so at what point did you feel comfortable enough leaving the other job and doing One Big Happy Life full time? What were the parameters that you hit?
So the decision that I made, of course, with talking to my partner, Joseph, is that once I was able to replace my income. And, as an entrepreneur, just because your business is making a certain amount doesn't mean that you take home a certain amount. So I needed to be able to replace my income because I didn't want to, I didn't need to, but I wanted to. I could have settled for less than that, but it was important to me to keep that income steady because I wanted to be able to buy a car for my daughter when she turned 16 and was ready to start driving. I wanted to be able to pay for college for her so that she didn't have to struggle the way that I did to try to figure out how am I going to get through college. And so those things were important to me and I didn't want to compromise on that.
Okay. So how did you go in such a short amount of time to be so successful? Because I understand when you're working for the man, if you will, right? If there's a problem, you'll figure it out. You'd be the go-to person. You'd go the extra mile, right? Team player. But when you're an entrepreneur, it's a whole different ball of wax, right? So give us an inside look. Put us on your shoulder as you're starting it. You're ready to take the lead. How did you grow it? And how did you go from being the corporate to the entrepreneurial spirit? Although I suspect it was always there, but it was really lit.
Right. It's one of those situations where when I look back at the common denominators and look back at the road, I've always been seeking more and more independence and autonomy in the work that I was doing, more control, because I've always had, it doesn't matter what job I've had, I've always looked for ways to improve it. I'm an innovator at heart. Even when I was working part-time and going to school full-time at VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, I was there for my nursing degree that I switched over to economics before going to University of Mary Washington. I was working in the Office of Veterans Affairs at the university, where we would compute veterans benefits and how much they would get from the VA to pay for college. And they used to do those things manually with a piece of paper. And while I was there, I created an Excel spreadsheet that made it really easy. You just punch in a couple of numbers and it does all the calculations for you. And it would allow us to process things so much faster. Similarly, when I went to HUD, when I became the branch chief at HUD, I took the worst performing region to the best performing region in 3 months. So that now I'm on a call with all of the regions explaining the processes that we put in place to allow us to process all of the incoming discrimination complaints so quickly. And so it's the innovator in me. And so having my own company has really allowed me to do what I've always been doing, which is have these ideas for how to improve people's lives. I like to say my job is to solve other people's problems. That is what I do now. And it's a wonderful thing. The hard part now is limiting how many new things I do. And two, learning how to sell. That's something that you don't really have to do in the same way as often as an employee. You do have to sell yourself.
What do you mean by learning how to sell?
Learning how to sell my products and services, because that is how my business makes money, not from making YouTube videos. I think that's a really common misconception, that people think it's really easy to just post content on Instagram or post content on YouTube and suddenly you're making multiple 6 figures a year. That is the overwhelming minority of online businesses that are making that kind of money from just putting out content.
Okay, so what's your flagship product that you're trying to sell? Let's role play it. Let's do a little coaching right here.
I've got 2. So one, my oldest is Wealth Builder Society, which is my personal finance membership where I teach people how to take control of their money and learn how to use it to build wealth while also enjoying their lives. So really helping them build better money habits, better money beliefs and stories so they actually enjoy managing their finances and they feel competent. So that's Wealth Builder Society. And then my second one is Business Simplified, where I teach people about how to start an online business like mine, an online education, coaching based business.
So which is the one that which is the one you're most passionate about?
Honestly, it's both. One is making more money on your terms, and the other is managing the money that you have. And my Wealth Builder Society was the first one because that's the very first thing that I taught people about. How do you manage your money? Because that was the expertise that I came with when I started this company. But then once you've run a company for long enough, you've got this whole other set of expertise that you can teach, which is how do you start a company from scratch and grow it to where it supports your ideal income and lifestyle. So business came second, but I'm equally passionate about both. And I actually do feel like we do people a disservice by teaching them only about how to be an employee and not also teaching them about entrepreneurship. I believe every person should know how to get a job in someone else's company, but also how to make money outside of traditional employment, because that's how we create our own income stability.
Right, 1,000%. So where do you find you're hitting roadblocks into selling the products? What's your biggest challenge?
So I like to say, and I think most entrepreneurs will agree, that entrepreneurship causes you to grow and develop and exposes your your personal shortcomings faster than anything else. And
well, that's why when I'm coaching, if I coach you in business, it ends up going into personal. If I coach you in personal, it ends up going into business, no matter what.
Exactly.
Wherever you go, there you are.
And for me, the majority of my career and my life has been very much built on this story of I can only rely on myself. I don't need to ask for help. If I want it, I go out and I get it myself. Whereas for me, at least, I find that selling requires saying to people, hey, I have something here for you. You should come buy this, which for a long time for me felt like I was asking people for something, even though I knew that I was actually helping them with their problems. But that was just such a challenging transition. The connection, I think, that selling a product requires, like connecting with people and being open and vulnerable and offering, that was a challenge for me. So I like to say in the earlier stages of business, I was successful despite myself, like in spite of myself, because I was holding myself back, because it was very hard to learn what I sold. If you didn't happen to catch me when the doors of a program were open, you couldn't even tell that I had one for so long.
Okay, so we're going to go into a little free coaching here. Let's shift your mindset. No one's going to buy from you what you think they need. I don't care what you think I need. I know what I need. So what you have to do is to tap into their pain. You have to get them. It's all relationship built. It's all trust. You have to get them to tell you what their need is, what the gap is. They have to imagine what their life would be like if they attain this wealth, and literally have them paint that picture. And then you have to ask them how that feels and let them tell you. Then you say, that's what I provide. So you're not selling them anything. And when you shift that, then they will know that they need what you're offering. For you to tell them what, it's like going into a restaurant, right? And you say, you got to have my pasta. It's so good. It's so good. Yeah, but I don't need pasta. I want a hamburger. But the pasta is so good. Like it's pressed. Grandma is in the back with the machine, handmade. We have the cheese that's fresh. You put it on. It's great. There's no calories. Yeah, but I want a hamburger. So if you knew they wanted a hamburger when they walked into your store, you would let them know that you have the best hamburger that they need and how they'll feel after they eat your hamburger. So nobody cares what you want them to. You know who is absolutely brilliant in this? Steve Jobs and the iPhone. He created a product that we didn't even know we needed. And now, 20 years later, we panic if we leave our house without it. Not American Express, our iPhone. It's unbelievable, right? So he created a product and then he found a way to have you not be able to live without it. It's an amazing story in marketing and sales, right? So for me, as someone that does all relationship coaching, all trust-based, all communication, you always need to start with where the client is first. Don't assume you know, and let them tell you. And you're really, really smart. So when you hear what they tell you, then you know how to let them know that your product will be the solution to that problem. Not in a Machiavellian way, not in a manipulative way, but in an authentic way. And why do you know? Because it worked for you. This is what I created. This is what lifted me up. This is what's giving me the life that I want, that you just told me you want. I don't know about you, but I'm not listening to someone that's gone bankrupt or a poor man on how to make wealth. I'm listening to Warren Buffett. The guy knows what he's doing. He looks like he's 110 and half dead, but the guy keeps on ticking, and you can't argue with success, right? So that would be a whole different approach if you just shift your mindset. And I get it too. I was always for years like, oh, I'm not a salesperson. No, everything. You work for yourself. Everything is sales. Does that make sense? Do you have questions on that?
Yeah, no, 100%. And it actually makes me think of another thing that in the beginning of business used to not hold me back, but one of the things that people talk about is, oh, we'll speak to you, before you had figured this out. But what's interesting to me is that my problems with finances were not like, I never felt bad about my finances, even when I didn't have a lot of money, even when I had a lot of credit card debt and wasn't making a lot of money. I didn't beat myself up about those things. So it was really interesting to me getting to know the people inside of Wealth Builder Society, getting to know the people in my audience and hearing their stories and how they were feeling about money and their finances and what was possible for their future. So it's been an interesting journey, just learning about how other people see money very differently than I always have. And it's been a joy teaching them that there are other options that can allow money to be more joyful, to feel easier, even without anything changing about their financial situation. Because you don't need to be miserable in the short term while you're making changes. You can allow yourself to be happy while also still being a work in progress.
Well, I created 4 or 5 avatars on a money personality and your relationship to money, because all of that's emotion based. And our relationship to money is formed by the time we're 12. And there's a lot to that. But people that are very, I've worked in the space for a long time. People that are very wealthy, some of them are utterly embarrassed and ashamed by it. We tend to see the Kardashians that are just grotesquely flaunting it, where it just makes you want to cringe, right? Or the person that, owns a company and, they have people making, minimum wage or not a lot, and bragging about the expensive vacation they're going on in the car. Like really inappropriate behavior about money. That's because that's not about money for them. That's about power, and that's about control, and that's about their own insecurity, right? And I'll talk to you so much more about this, but what you're doing is such a gift to people. Because there's a lot of emotional trauma, I'll say, around money. And it plays out a little bit differently for women than for men, insofar as not going for it, not feeling they're deserving enough of it. And, that's deeply, deeply rooted in society and, how we're raised. I mean, to this day, if you put dolls of a boy and a girl, forget race, a boy and a girl, and to give it to 2 6-year-olds, and their mothers are physicians, and you ask them who's the teacher and who's the nurse and who's the doctor, they will say the woman is the teacher and the man is the doctor, even when their mother is a doctor. Right? So we could have a million conversations about that. Okay, so there's so much more. I could talk to you forever, but I want to respect your time. I do have two really more important questions. One is, out of all the wisdom that you have, and I encourage everybody to follow Scarlett on One Big Happy Life, because she has pearls of wisdom that never ends. What is the one most important thing that you've learned in your journeys that you want people to have? The one most important takeaway.
It's always hard to pick one, and as I'm sure you know, but if I had to pick one, I would say it's this nugget that I always share, which is that life is the thing that happens between your goals. And I say this to head off this inclination that we all have that we'll be happier once something else happens. And so we keep setting goals and think, oh, well, I'll be happy when I get this, or I'll be happy when I get that. And then next thing you know, a whole bunch of your life has passed in between accomplishing those goals. And it really hit me in the 9 years that it took me to go from single teen mom to lawyer. That's 9 years of my life. And thankfully, I was always also focused on being really intentional about how I was spending my time in between as I worked towards those goals, so that I do have beautiful memories during that time. Even though I wasn't making a lot of money during that time, we did do things. We went on vacations. We spent time together as a family. I did projects with my daughter. I have all of those memories. And honestly, those are the things that really stand out to me, more so than the fact that I got a law degree. Like, yeah, it impresses other people, and I'm glad that I did it, and it made me a better person today. But when I look back on the cherished memories, it's actually not the walking across the stage to get my law degree. It's the moments that I spent with my family. So
I love that. I love that. Well, like they say, life is what happens when you're busy making plans, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other question I have is, what is the last book you reread and why?
Oh, the last book I reread. I'm gonna have to think about that. So I think it's probably the one that came to mind immediately was Principles by Ray Dalio.
Bridgewater, right up the line in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm. I really like that book because, it's one of those things where you and another person independently come to like the same thoughts and conclusions. And I love how he talks about these principles for life that he has learned in his own life. And they were things that I've been thinking about as well. Like, how do you change things in your life? How do you become a person that continuously learns from others and doesn't allow yourself to stagnate? How do you live a good life, right? Where he was a businessman, right? But some of his principles really do. It's all about creating a fulfilling life and reaching self-actualization. And I think it's a really good book. It's an easy read. And I have it like a physical copy. I have it on Kindle, and I'll just go through and just reread some of the highlights. I think it's a really good book.
Great, great. So how can people learn more about you, get your book, all that good stuff? It's unabashedly promote yourself.
So they can get the book by going to onebighappylife.com/book. And I have the list of all the common retailers, so Amazon, Target, but also local book retailers. And the book is available internationally as well, so links to international book retailers. And when you buy the book, it comes with bonuses. So come back to onebighappylife.com/book and sign up for your book bonuses. And aside from that, you can find us at One Big Happy Life everywhere, on Instagram and YouTube especially.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This was so awesome. I really enjoy speaking with you. You are truly a gift to everybody. And the message that you share needs to be heard loud and clear. So make sure to all the listeners out there that you go out and get the book and follow Scarlett on One Big Happy Life in all the places that she shared with you. Scarlett, thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a great conversation.